How to grow ginger in containers and have a huge harvest. That knobby root sitting in your refrigerator right now is not just a cooking ingredient. It is a living plant. It has nodes. It has eyes. It is already trying to grow. And if you put it in the right container, with the right setup, that single grocery store piece of ginger will produce a harvest so large, pounds of fresh ginger from one pot, that most first-time growers cannot believe what they are looking at when they pull it out of the soil. Ginger has a reputation for being tropical, slow, and complicated. That reputation is bad. By the end of this video, you will have the complete system, the exact container setup, soil mix, planting method, feeding schedule, and harvest technique that produces the biggest possible yield from a single container in any climate zone across America, including the partial harvest secret that most ginger guides never mention and that can nearly double what you pull from your pot. Fresh ginger prices at American grocery stores have continued climbing in 2026 and show no signs of reversing. But what most shoppers do not realize is that container growing has made ginger completely accessible to gardeners in every single USDA zone, including zones 3 through 6, where most people assume ginger is simply impossible. Serious food gardeners are getting into this now. The ones who started even one season ago are already building harvests that supply their kitchens year-round. This is the moment to understand exactly how they are doing it. Why ginger rain is the perfect container crop. Ginger does not grow the way most vegetables grow. It does not send a deep taproot down through the soil. It spreads horizontally, producing a web of rhizomes that expand outward through the top few inches of the container, branching and thickening as the season progresses. That horizontal growth habit is why ginger in containers are almost a perfect biological match. A wide, shallow pot mimics exactly the conditions in which ginger evolved to thrive. Most in-ground vegetable crops fight against container culture in some way. Root vegetables need depth. Climbing plants need space. Heavy feeders deplete container soil fast. Ginger works with the container. It fills the available horizontal space efficiently. It benefits from the controlled moisture and temperature environment a pot provides, and it responds exceptionally well to the management a container grower can offer. The production potential of a single well-managed container is what surprises people most. A 15 to 18-inch wide container, properly set up and managed through a full growing season, can realistically produce 3 to 5 pounds of fresh ginger. At current grocery store prices, that is a $40 to $70 harvest from a piece of rhizome that costs you $1 or $2. And that math gets better every year you replant from your own stock. There is also a compounding factor that most guides skip over. The second-year grower consistently outperforms the first-year grower, not because the technique changes, but because a saved rhizome from a productive plant is already larger and more developed than a grocery store piece. By year 3, some container ginger growers are pulling 6 to 8 pounds from a single large container. This is not a one-season project. It is a system that builds on itself. Drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever tried growing ginger before? And if you have ginger in your kitchen right now, tell me what zone you are in. I want to know where you are starting from. That growth potential is exciting, but it depends almost entirely on starting with the right rhizome, and this is where most beginner guides give you the least useful information. Choosing the right ginger to start with. Not all grocery store ginger will sprout. This is the most important thing to understand before you spend time setting up a container and planting. Conventional ginger, the kind sold in most mainstream American supermarkets, is frequently treated with a growth inhibitor to extend shelf life and prevent it from sprouting on the shelf. That same inhibitor will slow or completely prevent sprouting in your container. Organic ginger is your best starting point. It is untreated, it sprouts reliably, and the difference in sprouting speed between organic and conventional can be weeks. Look for it at natural grocery stores, co-ops, or the organic section of your regular supermarket. It costs slightly more per piece, but since you only need 1 or 2 pieces to start an entire container, the difference is minimal. When selecting a rhizome, you are looking for several specific things. Firmness is first. Squeeze gently, and it should feel solid, not soft or spongy anywhere. Nodes are second. Those bumpy protrusions along the surface are where new shoots will emerge, and you want a piece with multiple nodes, and ideally some that already show a slight greenish or yellowish tipping. That color at the node tip means the rhizome is already beginning to think about sprouting. Size matters too. A larger piece stores more energy and will establish faster and more vigorously than a small, thin sliver. If you want to go beyond standard grocery store ginger, Asian grocery stores are one of the best sources of high-quality, untreated rhizomes. You will also occasionally find specialty varieties there, young ginger with a pink-tinged skin, or varieties with a more intense flavor profile than standard commercial ginger. Online specialty suppliers carry Hawaiian yellow ginger, which is milder and incredibly productive in containers, and baby ginger varieties that can be harvested much earlier in the season for a completely different culinary experience. The right rhizome is the foundation of everything. Get this step right, and the rest of the system works. Now let us talk about the container and soil setup that takes a good rhizome and turns it into a huge harvest. The container and soil setup that produces huge harvests is everything with ginger. A container that is too narrow is the single most common reason home growers end up with a disappointing harvest. The rhizomes run out of horizontal room to expand, and the plant plateaus. The minimum width for a meaningful harvest is 14 inches. 18 inches is better. 24 inches or wider is where you start seeing the truly impressive yields that make people ask what you did differently. Depth matters less. 12 inches of depth is sufficient for a full-season container harvest. Going deeper does not hurt, but it does not help ginger the way it helps carrots or parsnips. For container material, fabric grow bags are the top recommendation for most ginger growers for several reasons. They are breathable, which prevents the root temperature from spiking in summer heat, a significant stressor for ginger. They are lightweight, which is critical for cold climate growers who need to move containers indoors. They drain perfectly, and they air-prune roots at the edges, rather than allowing them to circle, which keeps root health strong through the full season. A 15 to 20-gallon fabric bag in an 18-inch diameter is the setup that delivers the best results for most gardeners. The soil mix is the other half of the yield equation. Standard potting mix is a starting point, but it needs to be amended. Ginger thrives in a rich, loose, moisture-retentive but well-draining mix. The formula that works consistently well is 2 parts quality potting mix, 1 part compost, and 1 part perlite or coarse sand. That ratio gives you the organic richness ginger feeds on, the moisture retention it needs during peak summer growth, and the drainage that prevents the root rot that can destroy an otherwise healthy plant. Do not skip the drainage setup. Ginger cannot tolerate standing water at the root level. Fabric bags drain naturally. If you use plastic or ceramic containers, ensure there are multiple drainage holes and consider elevating the container slightly to allow free drainage. Start in a size-appropriate container and move up if the plant outgrows it, but do not start in the largest possible container and expect better results. Ginger in too much soil with no established roots can develop drainage problems early on. Starting in a 14-inch bag and moving to 18 or 24 inches after the first season is a proven path to the best harvests. Preparing and planting the rhizome correctly. The single best thing you can do before you plant is soak your rhizome in warm water for 24 hours. Room temperature water, fully submerged, for a full day. This step alone can cut days off your sprouting time and significantly improve success rate, especially if the rhizome has been in cold storage. It rehydrates the outer tissue and signals the plant that growing conditions are favorable. After soaking, you can plant a whole rhizome or divide it into sections. If your rhizome is large, dividing it gives you multiple plants and allows you to plant across the full width of your container more efficiently. Each section needs at least 1 node. 2 or 3 is better. Cut with a clean, sharp knife and let the cut surfaces dry in open air for a few hours before planting. This callousing step prevents rot at the cut surfaces. Plant shallowly. This is the detail that surprises most first-time ginger growers. Ginger rhizomes go into the soil no more than 1 to 2 inches below the surface, with the nodes or eyes pointing upward. Planting deeper delays sprouting and can reduce yield because the rhizomes need room to expand upward as well as outward as the season progresses. For an 18-inch container, plant 2 to 3 pieces spaced about 6 inches apart from each other and from the container walls. They will grow toward each other and fill the container completely by midsummer, which is exactly what you want. After planting, water lightly and place the container somewhere warm. Between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal for sprouting. Do not overwater during this waiting period. The rhizome is not yet producing roots capable of processing large amounts of moisture and wet soil before sprouting is established, is the primary cause of pre-emergence rot. Be patient. In warm conditions, shoots typically appear within 2 to 4 weeks. The growing conditions ginger actually needs here is the myth that needs to go away permanently. Ginger does not want full tropical sun. It evolved in the understory of tropical forests. Filtered light, moderate temperature, protection from harsh direct exposure. In American summers, full afternoon sun will stress and bleach ginger leaves and can significantly reduce yield. What you are aiming for is bright indirect light or dappled shade for most of the day, with perhaps 2 to 3 hours of gentle morning sun. This makes ginger unusually flexible for a food crop. A north-facing porch, a spot under a tree canopy, the east side of a building, these are all locations where ginger will perform beautifully, while tomatoes and peppers would struggle. If you have been avoiding growing food because your outdoor space does not get 6 to 8 hours of direct sun, ginger is one of your best options. Temperature is more important than light. Ginger actively grows between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit and slows significantly below 60. Above 90 degrees, especially in direct sun, growth pauses, and the plant focuses on survival rather than rhizome development. Container placement that keeps the root zone from overheating in midsummer. Partial shade, light-colored containers, mulching the soil surface, directly protects your yield. Humidity helps. Ginger grows visibly better with some atmospheric moisture, and dry climates can cause the leaf tips to brown and slow overall development. Grouping containers together, placing them near a water feature, or simply misting the leaves occasionally in dry summer conditions provides meaningful benefit. This is not a high-maintenance requirement, just something to be aware of if you are gardening in a hot, dry climate. What are you most excited to use your harvest for? Cooking, tea, juicing, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. As the season shifts from summer into early fall, the growing conditions naturally support the transition you want, slowing top growth and concentrating energy into rhizome bulking. That seasonal shift is one reason timing and the feeding program coming up next are so directly tied to final yield. Feeding and watering for maximum yield. Consistent moisture is the most important factor in rhizome development. Not wet, not dry. Consistently moist through the full growing season. The finger test works well. Push your finger 2 inches into the soil, and if it comes back dry, water. If it comes back with soil clinging to it, wait. Ginger growing in a fabric bag in summer heat may need water every 2 to 3 days during peak growth. In spring and fall, once a week may be sufficient. The watering schedule shifts intentionally as the season progresses. Spring and early summer are the establishment and peak growth phases. Consistent moisture, regular feeding, full support for top growth. From late August onward, you begin reducing water gradually. This reduction signals the plant to stop putting energy into leaves and stems and start concentrating everything into the rhizomes. That shift in the last 8 to 10 weeks before harvest is a primary driver of final yield. Gardeners who keep watering at peak summer rates through September often pull smaller, less mature rhizomes than those who manage the taper correctly. The fertilizer program follows the same logic. During the spring establishment phase, a balanced fertilizer with roughly equal nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium supports healthy leaf and root development. Through midsummer peak growth, a slightly higher nitrogen option supports the lush canopy that is feeding your rhizomes through photosynthesis. The yield secret in fertilizing is the late-season potassium push. In the final 6 to 8 weeks before harvest, switch to a fertilizer that is high in potassium and low in nitrogen. Potassium drives rhizome bulking, cell density, and flavor development. This one adjustment made at the right time, is the difference between a good harvest and a genuinely impressive one. Look for a fertilizer with an NPK ratio like 5-5-20 or any formulation marketed for root vegetables or fruiting plants in late season. From the kitchen, banana peel water is one of the best natural potassium supplements available, and it costs nothing if you are already eating bananas. Compost tea applied monthly through midsummer keeps the soil biology active and makes whatever nutrients are present more available to the roots. Get the feeding and watering right, and your container is building toward the harvest moment from the very first week. But for gardeners in cold climates, there is one more piece of this system that changes everything, and it is the specific reason containers make this crop possible where it otherwise would not be. Growing ginger in cold climates. The container advantage ginger cannot survive frost in the ground. In zones 7 and below, in-ground ginger dies at the root level when temperatures drop, which means cold climate gardeners who try to grow it in beds face starting completely over from scratch every single spring. The container grower faces no such limitation. When nighttime temperatures begin dropping below 50 degrees Fahrenheit in fall, typically September or October depending on your zone, simply bring the container inside. The plant may begin to die back naturally at this point, which is completely normal and actually desirable. Dying back means the plant is withdrawing energy from the leaves and concentrating it into the rhizomes below the soil. That is the final phase of rhizome maturation. You can harvest at this point, or you can allow the container to sit in a cool, dry indoor location, a basement, a garage, an unheated spare room, through the winter in a dormant state. Keep the soil just barely moist, not wet, through dormancy. In late winter or early spring, move the container to a warm location or begin adding warmth and light, and the rhizomes will begin sprouting again from the same root system, larger this time, with more stored energy, and capable of producing a bigger plant and a bigger harvest than the previous season. A second-year container ginger plant in a cold climate, starting from an overwintered rhizome that filled an 18-inch bag, will produce noticeably more than the first year. A third-year plant more than that. Zone 5 and Zone 6 gardeners who have run this system for several seasons report harvests that rival what warm climate in-ground growers are pulling, simply because the container system allowed them to keep compounding on the same root system year after year. If you want to grow ginger indoors year-round in a cold climate, a quality grow light positioned above the container and kept on a 14-hour cycle during winter produces active growth even in the darkest months. It is not as vigorous as the outdoor summer season, but it keeps the plant productive and can supply fresh young ginger through the winter for the kitchen. That is the cold climate solution that removes the single biggest barrier between most American gardeners and a serious ginger harvest. Now we get to the section this entire video has been building toward: the harvest itself, what it actually looks like, and the technique that maximizes everything you have grown. Harvesting. When, how, and the yield secret nobody talks about. Most ginger growers know about one type of harvest. The ones who know about both consistently get more value from a single container than everyone else. Baby ginger is harvested early, typically 2 to 4 months after planting, before the rhizomes have fully matured. It has a thin, almost translucent pinkish skin that requires no peeling. The flavor is milder, juicier, and slightly floral compared to mature ginger. It is used in high-end restaurants and commands premium prices at farmers markets because it is nearly impossible to find commercially. You can harvest baby ginger by gently reaching into the soil at the edge of the container and pulling a few young rhizomes without disturbing the main plant. The plant keeps growing, and the mature harvest continues developing while you have already been enjoying early results. Mature ginger is ready when the plant signals it. The above-ground foliage begins yellowing and dying back naturally, typically around 8 to 10 months after planting for a spring-started container, or when temperatures cool significantly in fall. Do not try to rush this. Premature harvest means rhizomes that have not finished bulking. Patience in the final weeks is one of the highest yield decisions you can make. When you are ready to harvest, tip the container sideways or dump the soil onto a tarp and work through it with your hands. The The rhizomes will have filled the container in a dense network. A properly managed 18-inch container at full maturity typically yields 3 to 5 pounds of fresh ginger, with well-fed, optimally watered containers in warm climates, occasionally exceeding 6 pounds. At $2 to $4 per pound at grocery stores, that is a $12 to $24 minimum return on a $2 starting investment and 1 season of simple, enjoyable care. The partial harvest technique is what separates good harvests from great ones. Rather than waiting to harvest everything at once, begin harvesting from one side or one end of the container while leaving the other side fully intact and continuing to develop. This is possible because ginger rhizomes are modular. You can remove sections without terminating the plant. The unharvested side keeps developing for additional weeks, and your total yield from the container increases because you are extending the active development window. Reach in at the edge, pull what has matured on one side, top dress with fresh compost, and let the other half run for another 2 to 3 weeks. This is the technique most ginger growing guides never share, and it is genuinely one of the most satisfying things you will do in your container garden. Storing, replanting, and keeping the harvest going year-round. Fresh harvested ginger stored unwashed in the refrigerator in a loosely sealed bag will last 3 to 4 weeks easily. For longer storage, peel and freeze it. Ginger freezes beautifully and can be grated directly from frozen, which is actually easier than grating fresh. A fully stocked freezer from one container harvest can supply your kitchen for 6 months or more. For extended fresh storage, submerging peeled ginger pieces in vodka or dry sherry in a sealed jar keeps it fresh for months in the refrigerator, and the infused spirit becomes an excellent cooking ingredient in its own right. Fermented and pickled ginger options extend your harvest even further and create products that are genuinely expensive to buy at specialty stores. Set aside your best rhizomes for replanting before you cook or freeze the rest. You are looking for firm, healthy sections with clear nodes, pieces that show the same qualities you looked for when selecting your original grocery store rhizome. Store these through dormancy in a cool, dry location, barely moist in peat or vermiculite, and they will be ready to restart in spring with a head start no grocery store rhizome can match. Each season you replant from your own stock. The rhizome system going into the container is larger, healthier, and more productive than the year before. Gardeners in their 3rd and 4th seasons often find they have more rhizome than their existing containers can handle, which is the perfect moment to divide the system and start additional containers or share pieces with friends, family, and fellow gardeners. Ginger divides so cleanly that a single productive 4-year-old root system can supply 4 or 5 new containers in a single spring. The year-round fresh ginger kitchen plan that experienced container growers use combines 3 things: a fresh harvest window in fall, refrigerator storage through early winter, and a frozen supply that carries through to the next season's harvest. Stagger 2 containers planted 3 months apart, and you extend your fresh harvest window significantly. This is not complicated planning. It is just the natural outcome of understanding ginger as a food system rather than a single planting event. What you just learned is not a gardening tip. It is a complete system that starts with a grocery store purchase and ends with a permanent, self-sustaining food supply that compounds in value every single year. The piece of ginger you buy this week could be producing harvests for you 3, 4, 5 seasons from now. That is not a hack. That is a genuine change in how you relate to your kitchen and your garden. Hit like if this made you want to start a ginger container today. Subscribe so you never miss what is coming next, and drop a comment telling me when you are getting your first rhizome. The ginger at your grocery store is not just food, it is a seed, and 1 season from now, you could be harvesting more of it than you can use. The only question is whether you start this week or wish you had. Keep growing your garden.